Double decreases are super cool. Today we're going to talk about centered double decreases. First, let's talk about just basic decreases for a minute. Just a basic decrease combines two stitches into one stitch. There are only two configurations for a simple decrease, one that leans to the right and one that leans to the left. The direction that the decrease leans depends on which stitch falls to the front. There's only two combinations. Which one falls to the front, which one falls to the back. Double decreases, however, are a little bit different. With double decreases, you're taking three stitches and combining those three into one stitch. Multiple configurations can be formed based simply on the order in which these three stitches stack when they're completed. They can lean to the left or right, just like a basic two-stitch decrease, but a unique characteristic of double decreases is a combination where the center stitch falls to the front, resulting in a straight vertical column that does not lean in either direction. Next, let's talk tools, starting with needles. It's important to use a needle with a very sharp point when forming double decreases. Blunt needles can make double decreases just a struggle to execute, especially if you're using a yarn that tends to split. I'm using Rowan's Soft Yak DK for my swatches, and it knits beautifully without splitting, but not all yarns or fibers are that kind. Stitch markers. Fixed markers that are placed on the needles between the stitches, the little round markers, usually don't work well with center decreases. Your stitches, you have to keep moving them. You need something that stays on the stitch. You want to mark the center stitch with a removable marker instead. It can be moved up as you work to help you keep track, but as you can see, depending on your stitch pattern, it's pretty clear, once you get established where it needs to be. But a marker to help you remind you what to do never hurts. I'm using Coco Knits pear pins that are nice because they clamp closed and they don't fall off the knitting. Common uses for double decreases include lace knitting, mitered squares, and even chevrons. With lace knitting, the double decrease is typically paired with two offsetting increases. This maintains the stitch count across the row and does not change the shape of the piece. In this example, two yarn overs are the increases, and since they are placed on either side of the double decrease, a fixed marker can be used. These yarn overs replace the decreased stitches, allowing the marker to remain in the same position throughout. I'm going to give you an in-depth look at multiple possibilities for forming a proper center double decrease. I'm using mitered squares for these samples with no offsetting increase. However, the technique for forming the decrease would be the same for any application. The basic center double decrease is often abbreviated CDD or S2KP. It's formed with knit stitches on the right side of the work. Slip two stitches together as if to knit two together, but you do not draw the yarn through the stitches. Knit one stitch, then pass the two slip stitches over the stitch and off the needle. If you find yourself needing to form a center decrease on the wrong side of the work with a purl stitch, then this is how you do it. The common abbreviation for this center double decrease is S2PP. Slip two stitches knitwise, one at a time. Insert the left needle into these two slip stitches from left to right and move them back to the left needle. Insert the right needle into the back of the second stitch, then into the back of the first stitch and move to the right needle. Purl one stitch, then pass the two slip stitches over this purl stitch and off the needle. There are different instructions and tutorials for an S2PP decrease. However, not all of these instructions will produce the same result, leaving you with undesirable twisted stitches. So be sure and follow these instructions instead. When working center double decreases in garter stitch or other non-stockinette stitch patterns, it's important to always work the resulting center stitch as a purl stitch on the wrong side row. You may need to place a marker on the wrong side of the work on the center stitch as a reminder. Center double decreases in reverse stockinette stitch are less common, and they do not produce the clean vertical line that is achieved when working them in stockinette. these sort of decreases veer off into an area one might consider more obscure, but you never know when you might stumble upon this need. So I'm going to tell you how. A center double decrease formed with purl stitches on a right side does not have a common abbreviation. You start by purling 2 stitches together. Slip the next stitch knitwise, then return it back to the left needle, leaving it twisted. Return the purl 2 together to the left needle. Pull the second stitch on the left needle over the first stitch and off the needle. Return the remaining stitch to the right needle. It is not attractive on the knit side, but this is to be used in reverse stockinette stitch so that the knit side would be considered the wrong or non-public side in this instance. To form a center double decrease with knit stitches on a wrong side row, the abbreviation is SK2P. It begins by slipping 1 stitch knitwise, knit 2 together, pass the slip stitch over and off the needle. This is basically a left-leaning double decrease from the knit side that forms a centered purl double decrease on the purl side. In a situation like this, where you're basically forming a center double decrease in reverse stockinette, just like a plain reverse stockinette stitch mitered square, you might want to consider working the typical knit double decrease, the S2KP, maintaining the center stitch in stockinette stitch. You just need to make sure and purl it on the wrong side, just like when working garter stitch. I hope you've enjoyed this in-depth look at the center double decrease. If you will visit our website at Stockinette.com, you can go back and reference each individual decrease at nifty tips located in the Pages menu.